I was basically ingrained with the idea that you should always be yourself. And, you know, it's a good idea in concept. You don't have to hide anything. You can just do what you want. And that's pretty sick. Um, but in reality, it's not always the best to be yourself because, in some situations it's inappropriate. Like if you're a sarcastic kind of person, you know, some settings don't need sarcasm, that kind of thing. So, the question I'm going to be answering today, or trying to, in any case, is should you be yourself? Which is certainly a hard question. It's not, it's different for everyone, which I do recognize. I, despite what my incredibly dead voice would have you believe, I'm a fairly upbeat person and, optimistic kind of. And that is just who I am. Can't really change it, although, you know, sometimes I try to. And, it's me not being myself when I do change it, which is, interesting because sometimes in real life, optimism isn't what you're supposed to have, which I don't want to make commentary on life today, but it's just an example again of how like sometimes not being yourself is inappropriate. So yeah. Anyhow, the point of that was just saying everyone's different. Everyone's situation is going to be different for being yourself. But um, so where to begin with this? This is an interesting topic. Um, you know, from my experience growing up, it's interesting, being around people that aren't like you. And, well, for me at least, I think I try to emulate parts of the people around me to some degree because, I look up to them. And that in turn, I end up, you know, acting differently in some situations than I might do without their influence. And to me, it's just like, you can't really help it. That, I wouldn't, I would go as far as to say that's not being yourself. Because, friends, you know, most friends I make are at, from school, you know, I'm, I'm 16, I don't really, like, well, I do work, but I don't like meet a lot of coworkers that I hang out with. So like most of my friends are from school, and obviously in school people have different strengths, and sometimes you need help. So asking for help if you do that, which I did, it makes you look up to people. So you kind of sometimes think, maybe if I was more like them, I would be better at this. That kind of thing, which can be true. Which is why I think hmm, this is an interesting phrase. I think if you're trying to improve yourself with the mentality, and I just like said that by emulating other people, you're going to improve yourself. I think that is a good thing. I think if you are motivated to change yourself for the betterment of yourself, then that's good. Like, even if it's not necessarily doing what your nature tells you to do. If it's the better thing to do, then it's better. So I think that's good. The problem is when this is taken too far. Like, what's an example? Like, if you see someone you think is cool, well, okay, no, let's have a different example here. So, there's in movies and stuff, there's sometimes a character that's like kind of crazy, and they want to basically be someone else because they're so great. They want to be, yeah, they want to do everything like they do. They want to look like they do. They want to do everything that that person does. And that's an interesting gray area because to you, it is bettering yourself because you think that person's really great. So by becoming them, you are improving yourself, which is an interesting idea to say the least. Um, but in that kind of example, like crazy people doing that, it's most people can see that it's taken too far. If you're trying to be the exact same person, you know, some being parts of them, it's pretty sick. But being the whole person, not so great. Trying to, not to get too dark here, but like kill them and wear their skin kind of thing, that's a little obsessive. And, you know, it it's interesting to think about where is that line drawn. Um, so sorry, I'm, I'm doing some chat things. Uh, is that all right? So yeah, the interesting question is where is that line drawn? And it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because at what point are you, saying, all right, yeah, like the question is at what point is the line drawn, which is hard to answer because you know it's well, for one thing, it's hard because you're looking from your own perspective, so it's important to have other perspectives to look on because you may think that that you're changing yourself a reasonable amount, but then turns out you're not, and it's getting bad. And it can take people to see that. On the other hand, on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's people that remain ignorant to flaws or flaws and just don't want to change at all. And most of the time, people will say like it's not about being yourself. It's just about sticking to your values, which is arguably the same thing. But it's just like, is that better? Is that better? Is sticking to yourself to the point that you're worse for it a good option? It's interesting to think about because like by well by changing yourself you can become better. And what I was gonna say is that more worth it than sticking to yourself and, being yourself, is that more valuable to you? But something I just thought of is that you can change yourself for the worse. Like, change isn't always good. So, if you change yourself in the hopes of being better, but it ended up making you worse, what's an example for this? Like, say, oh, I got this example from a teacher actually. So, say you're really organized, like type A. I think that's what type A is. Um, you're really organized, you keep everything neat, and like you're a perfectionist. Everything has to be perfect, and to the point where you can't accept failure, and that can be bad when you do end up failing, because everyone fails. So it can really hurt a person. So imagine if that were the case, and someone said to that person, "Hey, you need to worry less about being perfect and just do whatever." You know, they're just saying not to be a perfectionist, and the perfectionist person, let's call them person one, um, they really take that to heart. So what they do is they stop being perfectionists so much that they become the exact opposite. They're messy and don't get anything done and just don't care about doing anything well anymore. That is an example of changing for the worse, because you have taken a problem and you've removed that problem, but you have made another problem. So, it can be hard to tell, again, if you're changing the good. So that's another point if you're being yourself, I suppose. Um, Not that I'm really keeping track. I don't. Well, by the way, I don't really have an answer to this question. Should you be yourself? Personally, I'm not always myself. It's just not always convenient to be myself, which sounds wrong, but it's kind of the truth. So, personally, I think trying to be, in my personal experience, I try to change myself a little for the better, to try and fix my flaws, as it were. One of these flaws, well, actually, this kind of goes along with that example that I just gave. Like, so I'm fairly introverted. I used to not be, but for some reason I just am now. And I noticed this, and I was like, I need to start being more social. So I flipped to the opposite spectrum, and I started being too, like, act before you think, whatever that phrase is. So like now I've made another problem. Like I removed the anti-social problem, but I created the problem of now I have no filter. I mean, I'm not saying I do now. Well, I'm not saying I not, but you know what I'm saying. Like the point is, I did the thing that I talked about, changing yourself, but too much. Which I'm working through it, I'm working on it. Um, but yeah, so it's like, should I? Should I change myself? Because when you think about it, when you really stop and think about it, humans are selfish. Humans are incredibly selfish by nature. We're built to be, because in sur- in survival in the survival setting, like pre-modernization, we're cavemen, we're eating panthers to survive or whatever. We being selfish was important to survival. So it's in our nature. But the problem is that being selfish kind of isn't cool because of how society works. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but just how it is. Um, so like naturally, everyone, well, not everyone, but people change themselves to not be selfish. So in a sense, everybody isn't their self. So I guess what's the point of trying to stay yourself? You know, like you've already changed yourself. Why not change yourself a little more to maybe improve a little more? So it's weird, strange, even to think about. So I think that's where I'm gonna end it. The answer to should you be yourself is unanswered by me. I do not know. I am not myself, but it's parts of me are myself, not all of me. And that also goes into an argument of if you're partially not yourself, partially are, is that yourself? Like, is that yourself? Like, if part of it isn't you, does that mean the rest of you is, quote, quote, corrupted, just to use in lack of a better term? Or is that part of you that you haven't changed still make up for the rest? Another interesting question. But, yeah, leave you with some thoughts. It's interesting to think about. But, yeah, that's going to be for today. Hope you enjoyed. And, goodbye.